Welcome to With You Podcast,
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
Hey. We're going to have an interesting conversation today.
Yeah, today it's not just us.
So you're lucky.
You get a break.
Yep.
So today we're inviting our friend Clare, who, if you've been with us from the beginning of the podcast,
Back to the Future.
Was along with us for the ride from the very beginning, kind of walking us through getting started. She was a student of yours.
Yep.
And has become a good friend, and we haven't actually caught up in a while.
No, it'd be nice to see what's going on for her.
Yeah, so we're going to chat with Clare, and we'll let her introduce herself, but I like to call her Clare Extraordinaire.
Hi.
Hey, Clare.
Hello.
We're so excited to see your face again.
Always good to see you
We needed
guys.
to touch base. I think we thought about you, and it's funny, you said you'd been thinking the same thing. Like, we needed to just kind of talk with each other again and recall the humble beginnings, the
humble,
reluctant beginnings.
You forced us. You really forced us.
Oh my goodness. Oh, we could debate this.
I believe we were sitting in development class, and you brought like a little toy microphone, and that was the start of it.
Yes,
Oh,
I
really?
do remember that.
You have to be
okay.
careful. Don't fight with me. I have a good memory.
I'm going to be that person that backs us up and has Clare introduce herself.
Oh, that's a really good idea. If you go to our website, the picture of the back of that woman's head, that's Clare.
That's right.
You've all been wondering.
So who are you, Clare?
Yes, behind the curtain. My name's Clare. I met you guys, mainly through you. Do I call you DVD now or David?
You can call me David.
Okay. Through David, through the marriage and family therapy program at Wheaton College. So jumped into that. And then pretty quickly you made a comment about wanting to start a podcast. And I was like, that sounds fun. I could help maybe.
Oh, it was you. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember it differently, but that's fine. I think
the tiny microphone?
Yeah, the tiny microphone. And then you all were wanting to distract me from kind of preparing for lectures. I think there was a lot of distraction involved.
100%. That was me.
Clare, the distractor.
But it was like Tara and I talk about this all the time. We didn't have the wherewithal to do it.
Or skills or know-how or time or, I don't know, the ability to encourage each other in something we didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
I remember the first time. So we were in the basement. Claire was helping us manage our nerves and
yes.
How do we talk on the mic?
Right. I mean, so we're talking about the origins of how we started doing this podcast, which was in 2022, right, Claire?
Yeah.
So this
22.
Yeah.
This is 3 years.
I think fall of 2022 we launched, but before that, you were so kind to come to our basement and just sit and help us think about, like, what should we talk about? How do we talk on a microphone without, like, giggling and getting embarrassed?
Yeah.
Or talking like this with just monosyllabic language.
I do remember that. You guys were, like, trying to get comfortable with speaking into the mics and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was new and starting a little social media thing to help us launch it and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it feels like this is just part of our life.
This is our date night. This is what we do for date night.
You're naturals at it. I was reflecting on it after you asked me to come on here, but like the cadence of your relationship has changed. I feel like as you've gotten more comfortable, and it's truly, I was like, this is therapeutic to listen to you guys have friendship. Like, is really cool to just get to listen in on all your thoughts and all your tangents, David.
Yeah, well, that's my job, is to not go in a straight line.
Just who you are.
But it has been. It's it's been a challenge because I like to talk and Tara likes to listen. So, but that doesn't make for a good podcast. So Tara has a lot of things to say.
Yeah, I think Claire helped us with that too. Just encouraged us that like actually Tara could have more than 10% of the talking time.
I thought 10% was generous.
I mean, you guys had to find your rhythm, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like you locked it in pretty quick. Maybe you don't feel that way, but
no, I would say that's been a huge benefit of that for us, Claire, is finding like a different rhythm in the stage of life we're in, of like just the back and forth and I don't know, balance and all of that stuff.
Well, and it gives us things to talk about. So, we went through the season of parenting where our relationship was basically about parenting. And now we get to talk to a lot of people about a lot of different things. It's really been revitalizing to our connection and relationship.
Yeah. And I think you were looking up stuff. I mean, you haven't like produced a podcast before either. So I
not
think
at all.
You were looking up stuff to help us with what should be some of the things we start with. And I think you talked about finding some cornerstones. Oops, I keep hitting this. Cornerstones of like our core things ways we think and things that we think are important. And just having to go through that process has been really helpful for us because it's kind of been the core things that all of our topics kind of shoot from. And in fact, maybe leading to us writing a book on those things.
Yeah, we have a certain little project going on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
That you get no royalties, but it was helpful. I just want to put that on tape or whatever this is on little.
It's a virtual contract. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah. And this really is a catch up with you. So we want to ask you some personal questions soon. But before we just maybe a little bit more reflection on what seems different, or do you have some memories from just 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah. I had to think back because I was like, wow, that was like such a different time in my life too.
Well, yeah. You were a student.
For all of us.
You had a lot going on yourself.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. But the humble beginnings, like I just remember we would laugh a lot as you were trying to figure out how to do this thing. The host roast, that was the OG episode.
Yes.
That was uncomfortable.
No, I love that. I love it when somebody else can just ask us questions. That was awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, in reflecting on because I've listened to, think your episodes on and off throughout the last 2 years. And I feel like you have really honed in on the cornerstone. It sounds like even your beginning transition or introduction is this is what we talk about here. And one of them was life transitions, I think you said, which I thought was really great because it does seem to traverse all the topics that you talk about. But yeah, I mean, Tara, you were saying something about some other episodes, but in the beginning, I feel like I was listening to a lot of them intently because we're figuring out how do we want to edit them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the ones that I really enjoyed are the your family episodes, the ones with traditions or with the Spartan one. I really enjoyed or your questions to with your kids, because it's like a window into who you are.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed those ones. And sometimes, you might find this funny. Sometimes I listen, not because I want to get through it, but I'll listen on 1.5 or 2 times fast because your voices crack me up on it sounds like chipmunks.
Oh no, we haven't tried that.
Oh, we could sing a chipmunk song and then you could listen to it in top speed and,
I don't think anybody wants us to sing again. I made that mistake last time.
Yeah, if you haven't heard, we sang a duet.
Oh my!
About humility.
Sort of.
Yeah, oh my is right.
In one of the episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's buried a little bit in there, so you have to.
I'm going to go find it now.
Well,
expose it.
that's right. And for us, you kind of just doula'd us through. So I think of like Tara's job, and you really did that with us. You kind of helped manage the pain and keep us on track and tell us maybe you guys should go for a walk a second and then come back, because I think it took us like 45 minutes to try to do
Even the
Welcome
intro.
to With You podcast. That whole
Yeah.
thing took us
I
the
remember
first
that.
time.
Because we sounded like robots. We were like,
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
we were trying to read it off the script, and we would mess up the words and get frustrated with each other. And
Yeah.
now you'll be happy to know there's not a lot of editing. We're kind of one take wonders.
Love it. I love it.
we
So
don't
it's,
have
so
time for
proud.
anything more than that. It's
Yeah.
just,
we're just like,
yeah. So keep that in mind, Claire. Anything you say can and will be here for posterity. It will not be cut.
Okay. I had to regulate before. I was like, whatever I say, it's live.
that's right.
I'm prepared. I'm ready.
Well, for us, because you were a graduate student, you were kind of caught
Yeah.
up in a lot of things, and this was probably a nice little distraction, dealing
Yeah.
with us in a different way. What's been going
Yeah.
on over the last 2 years for you? So you graduated. Congratulations. That was a
Thank
surprise to
you.
all of us.
Oh, stop.
Major surprise. 100% would agree with you.
I don't believe
Getting
that for a
through.
second.
There were moments of doubt for sure. Yeah, that would be one of the bigger things, graduating. Because I had stopped kind of doing podcast stuff with you the year prior. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it was off into finishing my last year, doing marriage and family therapy, and then graduation. Man, after graduation is an animal. It is
What do you mean?
certainly different than, say, if you graduate undergrad and then move on to other things or live a little bit of life. So I went into grad school at 7 or 8 years after I graduated from undergrad. And so getting back into the swing of things took a lot of effort. And then you're in this routine.
Mhm.
So you're going to school and you have your internships, your job. It's very structured. It kind of has to be in order to get through. And then when you leave, the hope is you find a job if you need to, and then you're kind of off to the races. So yeah, reflecting on that first year out of grad school, there was, a lot going on for me. I did land a job, which was great.
Yay.
Yeah,
So I've
that's
been
big.
working in private practice since then, which is a whole new rhythm, which you guys know. Getting used to the inconsistencies of, hour schedules, not a lot of structure to that. But yeah, I would say that year out really consisted of, I bought a house, so that's another big deal.
Yeah, that's a lot you've done in a couple years. That's a lot. Big life things.
Yes. Yeah, wouldn't recommend necessarily right out of grad school. Yeah, but on a personal level, doing those things, they had their own trials that come along. You both know I've had a lot of health stuff I've had to manage over the years, and so things got a little bit worse after graduation, and managing through that and sticking full time, that was a lot. But
What helped you through that?
Yeah, that's great. The Lord.
Okay.
The Lord. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people during those transitions, you're working really, really hard, and then there's a crash that happens. We were just talking about that at lunch. Of you kind of go, and then there's a relief, but then your body kind of catches up with all the receipts you've been taking.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. So actually, I wanted to mention, I took a survey with a couple people post graduation to see what the results were and like how it's been.
Yeah.
For a couple of us. And I think one of the resounding things that I was hearing and that I can relate to is it took a year or more to try to find a new rhythm.
No. So what do you mean by a survey? What kind of questions were you asking? Like, this is to recent grads of the master's programs.
At least the master program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked them briefly, like, what has been hard, kind of what you shared, Tara, of like what has been hard, and then like what's going well.
Yeah.
And so the resounding thing post grad was that it was very difficult for a lot of us. The managing of schedules, you're leaving this community, this cohort, and then you're some people were from the area, some people weren't, some people stayed, some people left. So finding new support systems was really important as a young professional, probably in a lot of different fields, but specifically with therapy. So that's the difficulty is finding footing and also making ends meet. Just a lot of life things that you deal with as an adult.
Yeah. So the major things that you think across the board have been hard for your cohort has been finding just a new social support system, and then just financially figuring out how to survive.
Yeah. I think the social support was the biggest one. And also you need clinical support. So in a job that can be isolating, if you're in private practice, you're in a room all day. If you don't have good support systems to decompress, to get, other people's opinions and all that, it's just important. I mean, David, you taught me that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting though, because I think it's hard. Tara and I try to tell students, like, this is a special time, like in the master's program in clinical work, a mental health professional program. It's a special time because you do have that built in. You're all going through the same thing together. There's proximity. So there's shorthand you can use to talk about the suffering that you're experiencing, you're hearing, or personally. And there's people that are holding you, supervisors and faculty, even though it's a grind. I mean, it's hard. So it's hard to say, hey, this is a really good time. You're like, I'm barely holding on. And then you enter the professional life and you're kind of on your own having to figure it out. It's a very different thing. I think about that in terms of Fuller too. I think my master's program was probably one of the most supportive group of people we had.
As you guys both say, I'm finding it like there's a commonality to that of a lot of really hard times in life, like really all immersive times in life, like a grad school program, becoming a new parent, things like that feel so overwhelming. And then people will tell you, and you'll maybe look back in retrospect and say, these were the good old days. These were the best times, but you cannot ever really fully enjoy that in the moment, because it's so overwhelming. So it's kind of hard to tell people. And a lot of people I see, make the mistake of telling people this is the best it's ever going to get. That's really hard to hear when you're completely, underwater with, schoolwork or a sleep deprived parent. But on the other hand, it's good to know like that there's a real value to that sort of inherent community that you have in those times of people who understand what you're going through. Because then, like what you're saying is where you are now, you have to really seek it out. You have to go and make it and find it.
Yeah, otherwise it can be isolating, and nobody wants to feel that way.
No.
And I was reflecting, like, you might be like after graduation, there was a lot of people in my life who were not necessarily doing deeper emotional internal work, or could understand maybe the level of what my job entailed. And so finding spaces where that was safe to like express and share, and then knowing when I needed to sit with myself, get back in my own body, like that was a pretty important part of the process for me as well. Which is interesting too, as like, I'm happy to talk about this as a single person.
Yeah.
As a single woman who's 31 and starting a new career with no family around, in Illinois, I haven't lived here before grad school. That there's a challenge there. Sometimes I go home and I'm like, okay, there is some loneliness here. Even though there's major fulfillment in my job. and knowing when to ask for what I need from people is really important.
Is there a story or a time you can think that you've done well? Like, how do you do that? So
Uh,
you're kind of in a community in Illinois, and then everybody disperses. How do you go?
mm,
How do you go about finding that, or what have you done?
yeah, yeah, trial and error. Um, you know, a lot of it has been having to work hard to trust that the Lord cared for me in that sense and would bring people in that I need.
Hmm.
And He has done that really fully specifically this past year. So the first year out we're still chugging uphill,
Hmm.
looking for maybe a sense of place, a sense of security, and community. But yeah, I mean, I've staying connected with the people that I have made connections with has been huge. And I would say, I mean, faith community too. So that was a struggle for me in the past. You guys have known, but I've kind of recently dove back in and feel like there's been a renewed sense of like trust that God can care for me in those spaces.
Hmm.
Um, and I've gotten real good at long distance. So my heart people who all live outside of Illinois, I actually have a consult group with two of my best friends from undergraduate, and all three of us got our degrees in the mental health field.
Oh,
So we
wow.
consult every week for an hour, and it's one of the best things that has happened to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really good. So those are some of the places I've found like respite and community. So
I love that because you started saying trial and error, and the part of trial is try. Like
yeah,
it takes effort, and you really
yes.
made effort. It sounds like there was a lot of false starts and
Mm,
frustrations, but you kept on chugging up the hill, as you said.
yeah. Yeah, chugging up the hill, and I times it's easier. I mean, maybe we all know this, but it's easier to just give up if you try. You get a lot of like dead ends, or
Hmm.
doesn't seem to be working, or naturally progressing in some way. And I think I would attest a lot of that to my own personal work and doing some EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
So
So let's
for those of
pretend not
you,
everybody
yeah,
knows what EMDR is.
Yeah.
yeah. So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. It is a tool that is used to bilaterally stimulate your eyes or your nervous system in some way. So there's buzzers or a light bar or tapping. Um, and you can process old memories and old traumas that might be stuck in your body and feelings. And that has been a huge breakthrough for me personally in terms of anxiety and experiences, and even in my own work as a clinician. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, really, really been helpful for me to feel like I can connect with myself
Hmm.
more than I ever have, honestly. Uh, so that's been part of the process as well.
Wow. Sounds like you've gone through a lot of growth as well as like doing big things like buying a house.
Yeah.
And I know that
Yeah.
because we know you, we know like you easily make friendships and you always have a group of
Mm,
people around you, but you still talk about loneliness. I think a
hmm.
lot of people will relate to that because I think that's a common thread for a lot of, especially young professionals now. Like the way people work
Hmm.
now can be really isolating. And even if you've got friends, it can feel lonely, like
Yeah.
just carrying the things that you
Yes,
carry.
absolutely. It's important to talk about that. I think I've become a lot more comfortable with the loneliness, with naming it, and
Hmm.
with, I mean, if you want to say befriending it, I don't know. I know it's there, and I'm like, okay, it's there. And then knowing that I don't always need to do anything with it, but to just take care of that part of myself, or if I feel the need to do something, then to reach out and ask for what I need. But there can be a lot of loneliness, no matter if you're married or have a family, or you live in a community. It's a part of the human experience.
Yeah, I think that's really good to say because I think a lot of people think something's wrong or they don't have deep enough relationships or something, if they're feeling lonely that it's unfixable or that there's something wrong with the way they do friendships. But I think it is a really normal part of the human experience, even when we're surrounded by people, like, how you can be lonely in a crowd. Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's just feeling like maybe not everybody will ever understand all parts of you or that some things you just have to carry by yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's different than fear in a lot of ways. Like um there's an innate part to both of them, but I think they can interact and not necessarily they can coexist and not necessarily have to consume each other. I think there's a healthy bit of recognizing again that they're part of that spectrum of human emotion. And so, yeah, what a challenge to acknowledge those parts of yourself.
Yeah. What are some of the big joys or fun things that have happened to you in the last year? Because it sounds like the first year was kind of a lot of figuring things out, like this new, I'm staying here and I'm settling in.
Yeah. Yeah, there's grief in that too. But genuinely there has been a lot of good moments in this past year too. I was reflecting on that and I was like, oh, I should reflect on this more often. But so in the last like 4 or 5 months, a lot of transition has happened for me. I transitioned jobs, so I'm at a new private practice, which has been one of the best things for me, I think, in terms of my clinical work and feeling supported and secure in my job as a therapist. And yeah, there's been some breakthroughs in my own health journey, which has helped. I think I was reflecting recently that I've had a hard time in so many other areas because I wasn't able to connect with my body it's hard to connect with your body when you're in pain. And so feeling free of a lot of that inflammation and pain has been like, I am a new person. I'm like running around my house. Just experienced a lot of joy and settledness, and being able to go out and do fun things that I love and travel to see friends. That's been another big part. I do travel a lot. So, lots of close friends getting married or celebrations, graduating. That's part of like my daily, in a sense. I make it a point to go to the places and to the people that fill me. And it's been a lot of joy in that. I just got back from Atlanta from a wedding there, which was fun and warm.
Oh yeah,
it was
warm
really
skin.
nice.
Did you go anywhere interesting in Atlanta?
Oh gosh. Well, they have the Beltline, so like I don't know. Have you guys ever been to Atlanta?
We might have spent a little bit of time in Atlanta.
He went to
grad school.
I went to the University of Georgia, so
Athens.
We were in Athens.
We
got down to Atlanta, Hotlanta, we called it.
Oh yeah,
we went to
Hotlanta.
But we tended to go to like the Coke Museum,
or baseball games,
to Fulton County Stadium. So I think we probably hung out at different places.
The last time I was there, I did go to a baseball game. But yeah, like walking the Beltline, and there's lots of people, lots of like places, or like what's the place that everybody goes for? Like it's like the big brick building with all the food restaurants in it. Start with a P, maybe it'll come to me. But
if it starts with a P, it's
Ponce.
Oh yeah.
Ponce City Market or something.
Usually Peachtree something.
Peachtree something is usually the P word. So we were gonna guess, Alex. We guessed Peachtree.
Well, and the last time we lived in Georgia
was 1996.
We had very, very, very small children, so we were, we would have been going to zoos, not places that you were probably hanging out.
Yeah, I do love I don't know if it's their actual arboretum, but last summer when I was there, they had the trolls in their arboretum.
yeah.
The traveling trolls. They were in, I think,
They were here.
the arboretum here.
Yep.
They're big. They're giant troll sculptures made out of sticks.
Yes.
I wonder how they traveled down to Atlanta from Chicago.
They have to completely disassemble and reassemble that, which blows my mind. I hate
wild
taking things apart. Like,
I
that always
love
freaks me
taking
out.
things apart.
He likes deconstruction, which is, one of the many ways we're different.
It's what I do with students. It's what I do with furniture. Just take things apart. Tara figures out how to put it back together.
One of the few things that makes me anxious is pulling things apart, because I'm always afraid they'll never go back together again the right way.
But
the perfect pair.
But they might go back together in a better way. It doesn't have to be the right way.
There's so many themes in there.
Yeah, sometimes I put things together and I'm like, wow, they gave us extra parts. And Tara's like, I don't think those are extra parts. I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see who sits in that chair and what happens.
Well, I wouldn't want the job of taking the trolls apart. I don't know how they did it.
But I love that you're intentionally making time to go places to find the people that are life-giving for you, because that's the thing too. I see a lot of people just kind of waiting for life and people to come to them, and that can really enhance loneliness, because we feel like, why isn't it's not finding me? I'm you can just feel more alone, and it takes effort. Like, we joke about it, but we say that when we find friends, especially as a couple, it can be hard to find close friends, because there's got to be sort of connections in all these different directions.
Oh, sure.
But we like to say that once we find people, we chase them down.
You know who you are. We find you and we keep you. That sounded creepy. Let me try that again.
Yeah.
We like to pursue friends.
Yeah, the word pursue is scary too.
Yeah, all right.
But I mean, I think it is important, but it can be hard when we're in that state of sort of like not having a lot of energy for it, or feeling depressed or something like that. It seems insurmountable to spend energy or to risk rejection, or it being not a good match, to find a companion or friends to hang out with. But I just think there's so many benefits to having those relationships that it's worth the effort, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good word. I mean, you do have to put in effort sometimes, like, to create the change that you want, which is like, wow, like past me would probably be like screaming, wanting to throw a temper tantrum.
Well, go ahead. That's fine. That makes for good audio.
Yeah. No, but like, people maybe, it just takes time to access that. And if you're all about, as a therapist, I feel like I've learned that you can't force anyone to do anything, including yourself. So,
right.
Maybe you can, but there's usually something that crops up, or it's not as simple. So there's been a natural progression of maybe dying to the idea that, or the framework or belief system that I have bought into for a long time, and to move into, like, how do I want to feel about myself? How do I want to operate and show up in my life? And consequently, that is a lot of the work that I do with my clients.
Tell us about your clients. So, like, I don't know.
Well, don't tell us about your clients. Tell us about your work.
Specifically, I told Claire this ahead of time, that it might be interesting to hear, because obviously confidentiality, we're not going to hear stories of her clients, but just trending things that you see like people struggling with, because I think in different times you see a lot of specific things popping up in a lot of people's lives. What are you seeing as often
common struggles?
A common struggle, something that people would really want to address in therapy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I might need to think about this for a second, but there are themes. Absolutely. I was thinking about how I heard somewhere that your nervous systems find each other. So your same level of nervous system tends to attract your same level of nervous system. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of my clients, I see a lot of myself in them. And I'm like, how do they find me? But they do. Like, I don't know what it is. But in terms of themes, so like personally, what I've found a lot in my room, I found a lot of adult children of alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that could fit a lot of different, types of people or types of addictions and families. But that's been a big theme that I've been working with. In terms of, I just listened to one of your podcasts about, what's the one about naming things or about putting labels, the labels one?
Yeah.
Oh, and I was like, such a good word because everyone is labeling themselves and intellectualizing everything.
Yes.
Don't get me started. So let me tell you about labels. She's touching me. She's touching me.
Link to that in the show notes, labels and the people who hate them.
Which would be starting with me. I'm in the front of the line. It was funny.
Listen, everybody.
Yeah. Well, it was funny, Claire. We were at church and someone came up and said to us, listen to the Labels podcast. Liked it. It was probably one of your better ones. And I think I disagree with you. I'm like, oh, that's great. Let's talk.
Yeah.
But that's not the thing to do while you're passing the peace in the middle of the sermon.
Sure.
Well, they said that that there are good labels like child of God and things like that. And then it got me thinking more about how we define names and identities versus labels. I felt like we should have talked about that so we can say, like, I think names and identities we can assign to ourselves or live into. Labels are usually given to us by somebody else.
Or labels are categories. Like names are identity and labels are categories. Mm-hmm. So when you even started saying, what do I call you? Right. It was about our relationship and an identity. Mm-hmm. Like you knew me as someone else other than
Dr.
David.
Van Dyke.
Yeah. All that stuff. And but using my name, it's a different relationship. Now, if you would say the bald guy, that tends to be a label that classifies me in a certain way.
Yes. Yeah. No, great distinction. I appreciate that. Maybe you do an addendum podcast on it.
Well,
can you do that?
There it was.
Can you do an addendum?
Part 2.
You can do whatever you want.
Oh, okay. Well, we could do part 2. So I'm sorry, we got you distracted from, you started to talk about labels. About how your clients, the clients are kind of labeling or people are putting themselves in categories.
Yeah. The most challenging clients that I'm seeing very regularly and a lot of are the intellectualizers. So whereas I think social media can give a window to a lot of people, it only gives a very short snapshot of a larger picture and a larger, like the embodiment of who a person is. So if you're listening to a video that's like 5 reasons why or XYZ, you might experience this. I think it gives people this like a momentary satisfaction or like a feeling of security that there's an answer to the way that I'm feeling, but they're bypassing what they're actually feeling. And that was like a pretty big influence on the work that I like, because I've honed in like the type of work that I want to do more so in the last 2 years. You got to, again, find your footing after grad school and be like, what do I want to specialize in, if anything? But a lot of that pushed me, and then my own experience, into doing more like EMDR or like attachment-based somatic work, because people are so disconnected from their bodies. I feel like I struggled with that in my own, journey as well, and do at times. But to experience the fullness of human emotion means to feel it. And it doesn't mean you have to cry. It doesn't mean you have to have a certain expression, or that me and as a therapist in the room, I'm looking for a certain reaction out of you. It's more about like, how are you attuning to the way that your body is processing your pain? And yeah, it's tough when like there's an adamant sense about I need an answer to maybe who I am or why I am. Yeah, there's just there's a lot of nuance to it. So I'm curious what you guys think about. Sure, you have thoughts.
I have a lot of
I
thoughts.
know you do.
So
I
many.
know. Tara's looking at me like, this is not the time to lecture.
No, I wasn't even looking at you, but you were waiting
I
for
was
me to.
I was like, is she going to, do I have like the go ahead to go or not?
Claire asked.
I know Claire
You
asked, which
did.
I love. That's why we brought Claire on, because she could ask and prompt long lectures. No, the thing I noticed was that's probably about the fifth or sixth time you've mentioned body, either your body or body work or being embodied. And I think that's the more interesting thing for me right now. We can talk about labels, names, and intellectualizing. I have questions about people that had alcoholic family members when they were kids and what that looks like as adults. That's fascinating to me. But let's roll back, because you're talking about body. Like, a lot of people think therapy is about your feelings, all your feelings. So this body thing you're talking about, you started to kind of unpack it. I wonder if you could do a little bit more. Like, why is the body important, and what are you talking about body so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a newer thing in the therapy world, but I've really bought into it in terms of I think it's awesome because the body holds, and it can hold your experiences. I firmly believe that.
What do you mean by that?
So it can be even at a physiological level that generations prior, like there could be an experience or even a genetic thing that, let's say, a great grandparent or something experiences. I do believe that can get trickled down and have effects through genetics and through family systems, the way families operate. I really believe that can manifest in who you are, and it contributes to identity, I think.
Yeah.
So when I say I'm finding a lot of people are disembodied or they're out of their body, that's good. It's good for me to like
Verbalize
have language
it.
for this. Yeah. I would say if there's like a clear, like let's say a client is sitting in the room and they're talking and talking and talking, and they're in maybe more of their left brain. There's a lot of anxiety. Their body is probably saying that, and probably has been saying that for a while. But if they're not attuned to, okay, where might that be manifesting in my body? I have a client who gets stomach aches whenever she speaks to her son on the phone. There's another one where her hands will start to tingle if she even starts to think about wanting to talk about some of her trauma, right? Like there's physiological responses that happen when we orient our mind towards pain. And so kind of when I say bypassing the body, I think it's easy to do that in our culture these days. And so, I mean, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, you guys.
No, I love it.
Like, I'm not going to say anymore.
We get excited about the ideas of it, but I think you're right. It's like a new concept of how to play that out in helping people process that stuff, bringing together the body and the talk therapy about feelings and stuff, and learning how to process those together. We get really geeked out by epigenetics and like the science really shows that stuff is passed down, not just in our own past experiences, but like generationally, and that's supported by a lot of things. But then how do we not bypass our body, right? Like it is so ingrained in us, and even just in the way we do church in our culture and stuff, to just be about words, you know? Like, how do we get there where we are using our body in a healthy way to express and process that stuff?
Well, and we could go really deep into that, because the church is talked about as the body of Christ. So hands and feet here. So there's a body language in our faith that if there's something wrong in part of the body, it's easy to look at, well, let's reduce it down to what's wrong over there. What's wrong with that church member, rather than we're all connected.
The elbow.
And we're all connected. So that person's struggle is my struggle. And I think about like what Claire, you're talking about, of what's going on in our own bodies, but then there's body to body, right? Like the reason I hate, well, I hate a lot of things, but the reason I hate online therapy is that there's so much information that communicates us being present with each other, not just present intellectually, but present in a physical space that is meaningful. And I think it goes to how we're designed. We're made for that intimacy, intellectually, emotionally, physically, being present with each other. And I love that that's the work that you're doing, and thinking about how do we use our bodies and be informed by our bodies and respond to them, but also realizing what's happening in our bodies probably is more than just a physiological thing. It's a relational thing. It's an emotional thing. None of them are separate. That's the beautiful thing about systems theory, is there's a complexity of all the parts interact. I see you looking at me. All the parts interact with each other in a way that
I don't know
creates a
why
trajectory.
he's so anxious that I'm always going to cut him off.
well, this is a whole different thing. This is not like where I'm in class and I get to pontificate, and it's supposed to be a conversation. So I have that playing in the back of my head.
Because Claire knows she hit right on like our sweet spots of what we find so exciting.
It feels like we were set up.
No, but everything you've talked about is about that connectedness, which is like our core belief, is that not only are we interconnected as humans with each other and need each other in order to live a full human experience, but also our parts of our own body, like our our physiology, our thoughts, our feelings, like all of that stuff. And so you're hitting on all of that and getting. Yeah, both of us could just go on.
Yeah, and it might be fun to kind of end on some of the survey. Like, did you ask people for questions for us? Because we enjoy just talking, but we most enjoy answering questions and responding.
Okay. Okay. Well, I didn't ask for questions, but I could come up with some.
Make stuff up, you know?
Yeah. Make stuff
That's what a good therapist does.
There's truth to that. Okay. No, I mean, maybe I'll just reflect on some other things that they were saying and then see if there's a question that comes up. Okay. So, I mean, the questions were... been hard about being a young professional, young therapist coming out of school, and then what's been going well. So we kind of did more of an overview of the hard stuff, like finding the routine, challenging cases, finding your footing, finding your confidence. That has been long.
And Claire, I don't know if everybody listening knows that when you graduate from a master's program in marriage and family therapy, you are not done. You're working towards licensure. There's a lot more work to be done to get the credentials you need to get fully paid and all of that stuff too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you're grinding. Like, I mean, if you choose to, you don't have to, but you're working hard to find a sense of self in the room too, as a therapist, and make ends meet and all those things. So it's a challenge. And the inadequacy came up for some people. Like, I just really spent that first year feeling like, what am I doing? Which is relatable.
And I think that is a lot of the transition. I think undergrad as well as grad right now is entering into the current culture is hard. It's hard to find a space. There's a disconnect. It's hard to find connection. It's financially, it's challenging. It's hard to find a balance. And I'm curious. So we're old people. Imagine we go to church together. We're an older couple. How can we be helpful, present, a relational kind of balm support to single professionals or people that are going through transitions? What advice would you give us and people like us, old people?
Is that a label?
An identity? That's an identity. I guess I should say I am an old person.
this feels like a loaded question because I'm like, I could speak to just like culture and how it is right now
Yeah.
in terms of even in church culture, the need for connection is still really great. So in an individualistic culture, of America, I just to choose to be in community is more difficult here than I think in other cultures.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, in thinking about how you guys, I mean, I've gotten to experience you kind of open arms, welcoming me into your home and into different aspects of your life. But what you're doing with the podcast is such a great resource, I think, for young people too, to see like, so a thriving marital relationship. We don't often get to see that in our rooms here.
That's fair.
It's nice to reflect on, okay, like people do like each other.
Honestly, sometimes it's that level of hope that we need. It's like some people still like each other.
Yeah.
But so it's inviting people in. It's making yourself vulnerable. So I think what you taught us, to bring it full circle, what you taught us on the podcast was to be comfortable being vulnerable and inviting people in to our relationship. And
that is a whole new level. Like you can have people over for dinner and you clean your house and you make your best meal and you have a sparkling conversation and then you say goodbye. This is a lot more of a window into just like
every day, every blessed
even
day.
though it's not in person,
No. And it does feel weird because we've invited people in, but we're not invited into y'all's life. And so there's this imbalance sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes we'll tell a story to a group of people and they'll go, I know, I heard that already. We're like, what? And they're like, you told that on the podcast.
And we're like, oh. Can you pretend not? Like we're just kind of friends meeting for the first time?
It's not, some parts of it don't feel reciprocal, which is the nature of it. It's how it is. But it's a whole different way to share ourselves.
Yeah. But I think in church communities, not everybody has a podcast, but most people have a podcast nowadays. But it's how do you have hospitality? How do you invite people into the daily grind? And there is a limit, right? I know that the data shows probably 3 or 4 good friends is all that the U.S. family individuals can tolerate. There can be lots of acquaintances, but the 4 close friends, you have those where you kind of go to, but I think we can in a faith community in our daily lives, if we can generate that. And Tara kind of alluded to that. We try to do that by being very intentional of, all right, no, you're our people. And it has to eventually be chosen mutual, or it's just a season of us pursuing and then like, oh, we'll try again. But I think you bring up a lot. How do we stay in our bodies? How do we reach out? How are we intentional and not passive or reactive? All of these things are beautiful and give us hope as an old couple that the next generation is going to be okay, because it's really beautiful to see kind of how you're navigating the difficult transitions with most of the time grace, if not
arguable.
Yeah.
Well, I think you make some great points about like the reciprocity of relationship. Like, of course there's like how can we support you and vice versa, but it does need to be vice versa. Do you know what I mean? Like to have that sense of relational, it makes the most sense, that circular system. I don't know.
Yeah. And there's seasons. I think there's seasons where you feel like you're not, you're out of balance or you're needing more, and other times where you're giving more. And I think that's okay too. I think sometimes people feel like they don't want to ask for what they need because they're going to be needy. And I tell, especially new parents or people that are in that time when they should be receiving help, that it's seasonal. It's completely okay to receive. There'll be times when you're the one that's able to give back.
Yeah. Well, this has been a joy. I want to, for one last time, I want to put you in the podcaster producer role. And can you tell people what they can do to help out our podcast?
We need you to like, subscribe, follow. We need you to write. We want feedback. Write us emails. Tell us what you want to hear. All the good things. Call us up.
I miss
Love
her.
it. I know.
Invite us in for dinner.
Yep, and we'll be putting Claire's new house address on the website for you and the show notes, so you can come over for dinner anytime.
Sure.
Thanks, Claire.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Claire.
Thanks, you guys.